It's funny, okay? Like, you put them on my under there, where they are, right? That'd be rude. Right? So, in reverse order, I suppose it is right. Thank you.
Okay, I'll try and be as quick as possible because I'm really hungry. First, I just wanted to answer the question about women's participation during the referendum in Scotland. There was a huge mobilisation of women under the banner of Women for Independence, and there is a sort of very stereotypical view of Scottish politics that's dominated by machismo or great trade union leaders like Jimmy Reid. And Women for Independence went out and mobilised a huge number of women to go out campaigning for the referendum, but that's continued after the referendum. They've had a conference of 1,000 people. They've stopped the building of a new super prison, and all these women are active and are continuing to be. And at the start of the referendum campaign, both Better Together and Yes Scotland had this really sexist narrative about women in politics, and you'd get the Better Together. So the polls all showed that women were one of the groups least likely to vote yes. And you had people from Better Together saying, that's because women need security. And then you had Yes Scotland on the other side saying, women just take longer to make up their minds. So you had this like really sexist discourse that Women for Independence and a few of us in Radical Independence as well tried to break that narrative. And we went and spoke to women and read what they were saying about it. And there was this one woman, and I'll never ever forget what she said. The thing that she told me was, we're told all the time that independence will be better, that different is better, but we don't know what that looks like. If things are going to be just the same, then there's no point in voting. And that was, I think, a really crucial insight into what was happening. It was the slow start to providing an anti-austerity narrative to the independence campaign. And now you have all these women who are completely empowered by the referendum, who are starting to get involved in other movements that, I think like empowerment has a twin, and it's resistance. So once you're empowered in the political struggle, then you can begin to resist. And I think that's something that that it needs to be taken forward in whatever political expression we have in Scotland in 2016. I'll go faster. Because I want to come back in on what Brendan has said at the back. I think that's a really interesting point about Englishness. And I'm not going to sit here and say what I think the left in England should do, but there is one thing that it can't do. It can't fight for what the Labour Party are going to look like after the next leadership election. This is going to be a return to Blairism, it's going to be a return to New Labour, and the left can't take that side anymore. Yeah. And the things that you were talking about, like all the protest movements, like that's important, but the thing that Scotland and Greece and Spain have in common is that there was protests, but there was also mass political participation. There was people's assemblies. There was groups of people out in the street talking about democracy. And I think that is the key for moving forward for the left. In every part of the UK, that we're moving beyond Scottish nationalism versus British nationalism to try and reinvigorate class politics. And England needs democracy. That was part of our analysis of the referendum, why we wanted independence, because we wanted to break with an archaic and reactionary state. And of course people in England can want to do that too. English votes for English laws is not going to solve the democratic crisis in England. And I think that why not talk about having an English Podemos? Why not start talking in that language and building a narrative that says this is about democracy versus an outdated and archaic system? I think that's partly what we did in Scotland. Just finally, the woman who spoke about the media, this is really important for what we did in Scotland. We created our own media, and they are now, as print media is declining, a new print newspaper has just launched that is pro-independence. I mean, all of the media in Scotland, there was one newspaper out of all of them that came out for yes. So we had to find different ways of getting the message out, and that was partly through social media, but also through the social media stuff and blogs, and then out onto the streets, and that's how we produced literature. And we had to basically rebuild our media, and there's a really interesting movement happening in Scotland just now for alternative media. And I think that the state of the British press needs to be challenged. Like, that fundamentally has to be part of what's going on. And just my last point about what Graham said, like, have we missed the boat in Scotland because everybody joined the SNP? No, of course not. Because that SNP surge did something very particular. It meant that every time I've been called naive or idealistic because I'm anti-war, anti-Trident, anti-austerity, the SNP just ran that campaign and got 56 MPs. It's changed the framing of politics, and you've seen that at Westminster as the parties triangulate over and over to the right. It doesn't open up space for the left. So we're moving left, and it's opening up a space for us to have that new dialogue. I refuse to accept that there isn't a space for a radical left, an organisation to the left of the SNP that's pro-independence, and for me it's the only way we're actually going to get independence itself.
I'll just start with your question about the media, sort of following from that as well. In Ireland, the richest guy, his name is Dennis O'Brien. He basically got fantastically wealthy as a billionaire after being handed the 3G licenses by the present parties in government back then. He also owns the meters that are being put in, the company that puts the meters into people's homes for the water meters. He also owns about half of the mainstream media. So he's just this. People can really clearly visualize a solid nexus between the mainstream media, politicians, business. All of it is there, and it's just been like after the first protest. I remember saying how big a surprise it was. The biggest tabloid. I remember taking a picture. I have it here. It's the Sunday World. Fury of 150,000 people. The front page and just the march, and then it says water revolt as the country says no, and that's right. It's not that one. But he owns this one. The Sunday Independent is that's the broadsheet, I suppose. It says open revolt. A picture of, like, you know, the cartoon of the French Revolution, someone storming over it. Coalition in meltdown. New opinion poll shows Sinn Féin most popular party. 2 in 5 will pay the water tax. So they obviously hadn't gotten the memo to, at that point. Since then, they've instituted like a complete media blackout. They don't even talk about it disparagingly. Well, until around January, when they started using the teeth to arrest people and clamp down. But something has happened. Like I was very skeptical, a few years ago, and Occupy took off. Social media is where it's at. Like, people really have organically just thrown themselves. Like, people who previously weren't activists, regular, normal working class people, just everything is just political now on their timeline and everything. Their posts on Twitter and everything. And there's like new websites popping up. There's ones pre-existing, new blogs, like you're saying. There's one single Facebook group, Hilda's internal groups, that I think anyone can join. It's called like Fight the Water Scam Lawfully, and there's 30,000 people in that one group. Like, that's just a small sample of the amount of people who are out active fighting, resisting day to day. So there is a sense of a kind of rebuilding of like our media and our infrastructure and our site kind of gradually kind of coming together. And as to involvement of women and migrants, women have been the backbone of the anti-austerity movement in Ireland since 2008, since it all kicked off, as well as fighting the choice to double shift. But in every meeting, every campaign, there is at least 50-50, but every organising meeting, every people who go out and do the work, it's the women basically who are sticking to it and pushing it on, mentally, in my experience, quite politically. But there was, once the Garda repression kicked in, so people were brought to court, blocking the meters, injunctions were put on people protesting near the installation of meters. In Dublin North East, where they first started doing it, they got a lot of high-vis jackets to have, like, because it was getting dark, vigils against Garda brutality. And they'd go to like the local Garda station, have a protest, and put candles out and be loads of them. And like a network like that formed across the country, so in Cork, Galway, and everywhere, we'd be doing it at the same time. So there's a lot of self-organisation, happening kind of informal, but like women have been leaders in the movement. That's with migrants. Yeah, in Dublin, they come out in the marches. I'm not sure how organised an intervention It is because there's a lot of, like Ireland has been turned upside down in the last 30 years, probably like a lot of places. Communities have been basically, working class communities smashed, put out to kind of the suburbs and vice versa. This is a process of establishing kind of communities for the first time, knowing who your neighbours are, stuff like that, really basic kind of molecular level of solidarity at the local level that's being rebuilt. And migrants are part of that. Then there's a question, how does the movement relate to something like AAA or the Anti-Austerity Alliance? That's been getting a lot of press internationally. The Anti-Austerity Alliance, okay, so we have the United Left Alliance that fractured, which is the alliance between the SWP and SP, equal portion, a third, then a third, everyone else. It fractured, and the SP made their own Tusk-like formation called Anti-Austerity Alliance, and SWP went on with their own, I think, probably, if I'm imagining it right, a Respect-like formation called People Before Profit. People in the movement, their first instinct is they don't want anything to do with any political parties. They're not left, they're not right, but the demands are obviously left. They're obviously from a position of progressive working class power. But you have to be very, very delicate. So Anti-Austerity Alliance they're like a machine, a pump, and they won the 2 by-elections last year. The last 2 by-elections in a row they've won. So that brings them to like 4 TDs, 3 TDs. And there was a small breakthrough, kind of moderate breakthrough, more great from what we were expecting in the local elections as well. But then we also lost the NDP seat. But basically, the radical left, the different parts of it, when the ULA fell apart, it was like Humpty Dumpty fell off the wall. So you have all those pieces, the radical left could make gigantic, it could easily, I think, get double-digit percentage of the vote, say, opinion plus support. I think now hundreds of people would flock into it. It's just a matter of patiently getting, because we can't build anything in Ireland in our situation, really, I don't think, without People for Profit and AAA. It's a matter of kind of getting to a place where we can have a habitable left, I think, the trade unions, the 5 trade unions who broke from the Labour Party, who have a proposal for a new, they want to kind of be the third, Syriza in Greece, Podemos in Spain, and then here they want to make a splash. Well, obviously everyone does. Or sorry, in Ireland, everyone does. They see it as Sinn Féin plus everyone else as a bloc, and going forward. Not necessarily that tight, but it's kind of like a race against time. If we can't recompose to like the radical left, say, then it'll all just be sucked into Sinn Féin, and they'll quite possibly bulldoze us. Because momentum will be with them. Where there's discussions ongoing, there's a joint statement released in the week. I would be fairly hopeful that there will be a radical left formation that runs in the election, which is no later than next spring. It's just a matter of what that looks like, how it works, what its formation is, and it'll do very well. And then the next cycle of struggle, likely the opposition will be mostly Sinn Féin plus a sizable radical left bloc. So even the next election, it's not a matter of win or we lose. It's opening up another window where the government will be unstable. The establishment parties are all combined under 50% of the vote for the first time ever. Like in the early 2000s, I think they were like 95%. And since the foundation of the state, they're at 95%. There's been an absolute collapse in the old pillars of Irish kind of society. Fianna Fáil, the dominant party that grew for like 70 or 90 years. The Gardaí, the police, the civil service, even the tops of the trade unions, the church, everything is just kind of going down. And now this movement, kind of like I was saying, like a molecular rebuilding of the community, the local level, it's like a gradual kind of constituent process where hopefully we're going to hit them hard and smash them.